Stephen, after 41 years, why now? Why decide to retire now?
I guess I had to go at some point. I'm past the traditional retirement age. But I think the two big things really are that we're coming to the end of a very big project, the Archway project, which I was heavily involved in when it was kicked off, and other people have been doing the heavy lifting on that more recently. But that will come to an end very soon. But other projects are going to start. The relocation of the Fashion Museum is going to be a 5-year project, and I'm not sure it's right that I start on that and then hang around for another 5 years. I think it's probably better that my successor take that on and see that one through. So things come together this autumn that just make it the right time for me to go.
Well, it has certainly been a roller coaster of a career, and I wanted to take you back 41 years to when you actually started your job. Now, Baines didn't exist then, did it? What was the setup when you joined, and what was your job?
It was Bath City Council then, and I came into a post that was called Senior Keeper and Keeper of Local History in Bath Museum Service, which was part of the Department of Leisure and Tourist Services. And Sam Hunt, whom you may remember, had been appointed as museums curator in 1978, and I was the first museum professional to actually go into the Roman baths. There were only 6 books in the office then, and so it really was a start-up in many ways.
How important was heritage at that time to the city?
I think it was important, but it was very much dominated by marketing, if you like, and there's nothing wrong with marketing, but it was marketing heavy, and it was at a time when there were excavations taking place in the hot spring in the King's Bath, and also then shortly afterwards under the pump room on the Roman Temple precinct. And I think it was a signal to the city that actually there were new things to be discovered, new things to open up and attract people to. And in some ways, in the early 1980s, there were 3 big excavations that hit the headlines in this country. There was the Mary Rose, there was Jorvik in York, and there was the Temple precinct in Bath. And I think that perhaps gave another dimension to Bath, which people hadn't really known about before.
You, in your time, have seen the city get not 1 but 2 UNESCO inscriptions. And I take it the first one was very important in terms of attracting an international tourism trade to the city.
It certainly was, yes. It was in 1987, and it was a year after we hit the 1 million visitors at the Roman Baths for the first time ever. But I think it was also a recognition that those hallmarks of world heritage, integrity and authenticity, were actually very important. And what we were starting to see around that time was that people, they'd had the recreated experiences, Jorvik and so on, and there's a place for that. But Bath was all about the real thing. Come to the Roman baths, you can walk on Roman pavements, you can look through Roman arches, you can gaze at the hot water that's been rising for 8,000 years at least. It's an authentic experience. You walk around the Circus and the Royal Crescent, you see real 18th century houses, and it was a recognition that actually Bath is remarkably complete and something that needed preserving.
Your responsibilities extended elsewhere over time. One of the places you're responsible for is the Victoria Art Gallery. Now, during your tenure, that was completely renovated, restored. Do you remember that?
I do remember it. It was the first big decision I made after coming into a new post of Assistant Director, Leisure and Tourism, responsible for museums. And at that time, the gallery was heading to become a rather a mishmash of an attraction. It was only on the top floor because the lending library was on the ground floor and in the basement. And there was a scheme on the books to leave the gallery at the top, put a kind of city experience or city museum on the ground floor, and then take the geology museum from Queen Square and put it in the basement. Now that last bit just seemed to me a bit wrong, maybe verging on the unethical, but it was going to create a mishmash, and I felt it was better to actually turn the place into a first-class art museum and do that really, really well. Give ourselves a purpose-built exhibition gallery on the ground floor rather than to have the mishmash. And from there, of course, we went into having this ongoing programme of fantastic temporary exhibitions, which John Bennington has steered so brilliantly over many years now.
Another stalwart of the city.
Absolutely.
There are times when things go wrong, and I wanted to remind you, perhaps you don't want to be reminded of that terrible day when part of the plaster ceiling of the ballroom in the assembly rooms fell down. Quite a job for you to clear up and restore.
Yes, it was July 1988, and it wasn't a day, it happened at night. So the building was closed to the public, and a huge section of ornamental plaster fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing the night watchman, but more importantly missing the chandeliers. And really the restoration programme was steered by Mike Gray from our property department, working with the National Trust's architects, David Brain Partnership. But yes, it was 4 years. When the plasterwork was analysed, it was found that it was faulty bonding that was meant to attach it to the roof structure that had failed, and that was true throughout the building, so the entire lot had to be stripped out. There was faulty wiring found, rotting wood, and I think post-war craftsmanship perhaps wasn't what it should have been, and so the whole place needed rebuilding.
Yes, for those who don't know, we better point out that the assembly rooms, unfortunately, was burnt out, wasn't it, during the war? So there was a major restoration post-war.
There was. It was gutted by incendiary bombs in April 1942, and then it took a while for a decision to be made as to whether to rebuild it at all or whether to do something else there. There was actually talk of a multi-storey car park for a while, but eventually, thank goodness, the decision was taken to rebuild it, and it eventually reopened in 1963.
Do you have highlights? I'm putting particular memories to you, but I should be asking you about things that you remember, high points of your career.
Oh gosh, there are so many. Strangely, sometimes a highlight would be arriving at work at the pump room at 7 o'clock in the morning and going downstairs to the baths, which would be absolutely silent. It would just be dawn, there'd be mist all over the water, it'd be utterly still, and just being in the moment there for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour in this magnificent place on your own. There's actually nothing to beat it, I have to say, and colleagues of mine who do the same will understand that. But yes, there have been other highlights. I think going to China on a British Council delegation of UK museum directors in 2009 was an absolutely fascinating experience. And I went to try to understand more the Chinese market and what museums they're used to there, and perhaps what we could do better here. I think also when we introduced audio guides to the Roman Baths and Fashion Museum in 1995. It was quite a seminal moment. It was quite, I suppose, a bold move, because that kind of interpretation had not been used before in Bath. And we felt that because we have a very international audience, we needed to provide interpretation in many different languages, but we also have the integrity of the building. We couldn't start nailing interpretation panels to the walls in multi-languages. If people can carry the interpretation around with them and select their language, then that leaves the walls free. People can take the audio guide with them. What was particularly innovative, I think, was that we were the first place in the world to include it in the admission charge. It was an inclusive tour, and since then most others have become that. Up until then you had to pay extra for your audio guide, and the take-up somewhere would be between 5 and 10%. We had a 98% take-up because it was included.
You mentioned that 7 a.m. experience at the Roman Baths alone. That, of course, when it comes to places of interest, museums and places of heritage, is something the royal family normally enjoy. They get to look around it without the crowds, which reminds me, of course, the Queen came to Bath, did she not? And you were heavily involved in that one.
I was, yes, the Queen's Jubilee visit, and I was asked by John Everett, the then Chief Executive, to organise her visit to Bath and North East Somerset, because she arrived by car actually at Farrington Gurney and drove through to Bath. And so part of my task was to get the schools along the route enthused, get the kids out to arrange little flags they could all wave, which meant getting the grass verges cut because it was May and the grass was burgeoning, but then organising the special visit to the Guildhall, then to the Pump Room and Roman Baths. Yeah, it was very special. I mean, in a sense, it goes with the job. You know, you have to do things like that. And I think one of the things that stands out for me from that moment were not so much Prince Philip's expletives about the water and the fact people still drink it. I mean, he was brilliant in his language. But was the reaction of some members of staff who were fantastic. We had front of house staff on duty, and one fairly young lad said to me, what do we do if the Queen comes and talks to us? I said, treat her like any other visitor, because I expect you to treat every visitor like the Queen. And he got it, and sort of everyone in that staff briefing relaxed, and actually it was a fantastic experience for everybody concerned.
I know another thing that a lot of people look back with great affection was the three tenors performing on the lawn in front of the Royal Crescent. Something else you had a hand in. Unfortunately, I could only listen from outside, but there you go.
Yes, that was a remarkable thing. It was when YTL, the Malaysian company, took over Wessex Water, and their thank you to the city was to organise this free three tenors concert where we had 10,000 people seated in front of the Royal Crescent. Then we had another 20,000 with a live screen relay in Royal Victoria Park nearby, and I was asked, because I'd organised the Queen's visit, I was asked to lead the council side on that, but there was an event organiser. Wessex Water were heavily involved, so it was very much a team effort, and I was very pleased to be involved in it.
YTL, a big presence in the city now, of course, with the Thermae Spa and the Gainsborough.
Absolutely, yes.
And we're pleased to have them, I'm sure. You got an MBE in 2018. I'm not surprised, were you?
Yes, I was very surprised. The citation was for services to museums, heritage and tourism, and I suppose I felt a bit of a fraud, because I've always viewed what we've done here as being a team effort. You know, I haven't really tried to push myself forward, but you actually have to lead in a job like this, and so when that came through, it was a bit of a shock, and I felt it actually belonged to my staff at the Roman Baths, the gallery, the Fashion Museum, and you know, the back of house staff, the maintenance guys who really keep the place together, keep it looking good. It really belonged to everybody.
You built up the heritage trade in this city. Tourism, Stephen, has been a very, very important earner for the city, for Baines. Then along came the pandemic, and maybe that was the point when everybody realised just how important heritage was. Can you forgive them now, bearing in mind what we've been through, for looking maybe for other income streams? In your opinion, and that's all I can ask for, do you still regard heritage as being important?
Yes, I do think heritage is very important still, but it is part of a bigger mix in the city. You know, the car parks are another major income stream for the city, and people who come to the Roman Baths or visit our heritage often come by car. The commercial estate is a huge earner for the council as well, and the restaurants, the businesses, the shops that occupy a lot of the city centre are part of the offer that we have. I think the challenge really is, and this is an opportunity as well, just to look at whether we can rebalance the tourism offer, perhaps be driven less by volume and more by value, have fewer people coming but having them staying longer. And those are the discussions that are taking place now. It is a huge earner for the council, but I think the council really values its heritage as much as it ever has. I think it understands the World Heritage accolades as being something that will bring people here, but which also convey on us a responsibility for actually looking after it properly.
Experience seems to be the buzzword now, both in heritage services, in museums, even in retail trade, that to encourage people, you've got to give them an experience. Isn't that something you've been doing for 41 years?
I'm not sure about for the full 41 years. I think that the ease, habit, if you like, enlightenment, education, experience, I think engagement is the big thing now, because actually that is the way a lot of people like to get their experience. Engaging by actually handling objects, engaging by meeting a first-person interpreter, engaging by actually being immersed in the water if you're at Thermae. And I think engagement probably is where experience has moved on to now.
You cannot speak for the man who's going to replace you. I suppose I better not ask you to name him. I know it's going to be a man. But if he came to you for advice, reflecting on what you've been through, and again, Stephen, this is only your own opinion, what might you say to him?
I'd say bring your own ideas. Don't try and be another Stephen Bird. Bring your experience from elsewhere, but work with a team. There's an absolutely fantastic team in Heritage Services. A lot of experience, a lot of wisdom there. Use all of that to take us forward.
Any regrets?
Oh gosh, regrets, yes. I would have liked to have found another site for the record office. We have fantastic archives, a designated collection of one of national importance, and you see around the country now new record offices springing up with state-of-the-art storage for their collections, study facilities, level access, and our archives are still in the Guildhall, and I just feel that it would have been great to get somewhere new for our archives to be much more accessible than they are now.
Well, maybe that's something else your replacement can have a look at when he takes over, because we're doing an interview. You're still in charge technically at the moment, so when I put your name at the bottom of the screen, it will say Head of Heritage Services. What are you going to be doing from now on when you finally can shut the office door for the last time?
I've got a number of things that I want to look at. I've had a number of requests from people to do things, and I've said, give me some space. I'm not going to jump into anything straight away. I'll probably spend more time on my own. Being in the city centre, it can be quite claustrophobic. You're surrounded by people all the time, and so my weekends I like to get out and walk. I hope to do a lot more walking and visiting fantastic spaces like this.
Well, I thought chatting to you here would give you a taster of what's to come. And it's quite ironic, really, because we've got maybe one or two woods buried inside this little church. That's Edward, the church warden, just coming out of the church. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, so it's quite nice that we have our chat here. Stephen, I wish you the very best in the future, and thank you very much. I will be there next week to raise my glass and wish you a very happy future.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks very much.